Hello and welcome to Art Profiles, the programme which allows you to explore the lives of those working in the arts and some of the exciting events that are currently happening. We have a look at actors, musicians and filmmakers, but this week we are looking at the career of a photographer, but he is not working in the industry the same way you would expect. My guest today might look like an ordinary person, but after completing his advanced photography course at the Blackpool and the Fylde College in 1979, he went on to have a career working for the Ministry of Defence. Currently my guest is working as a support tutor at the very college where he learnt his trade, as well as working as a freelance photographer. To talk about his fascinating career in further detail is Chris Barker. Thanks for joining us here today, Chris.
No problem.
So tell us, Chris, how exactly did you get involved for working for the Ministry of Defence?
During my second year at college here in Blackpool, the Ministry of Defence offered summer employment. I applied for it, but unfortunately I'd already got a summer job, so I turned it down. But I did say to them that if they had jobs available when I finished my course, if they could get in touch, I'd be ever so grateful. And 6 months after I started work, they said they were recruiting and invited me for an interview.
So did you end up getting involved in any campaigns?
Not initially. I worked in a large stores depot first, and then after I got promoted, I went to work for Technical Publications, which did all the service manuals for the RAF, Army Air Corps and Naval Air Service. Eventually, I moved on to the Army Press Office in York, and that started a series of visits overseas firstly to Bosnia for 6 months, and then I went to Kosovo, Iraq and eventually Afghanistan.
So going into these war zones, what about safety precautions?
You get body armour and helmets, but you just sort of keep your eye open, and you know, no photograph is worth dying for. So
have you ever been fired upon?
Lots of times, both rockets, mortars, rifle fire, and I've never really felt worried by it. You tend to feel a little bit invincible in situations like that. However, when my son joined the army and went off to Afghanistan, I was much more worried for him than I ever was for myself. I now know what my family were feeling like when I was going out on operations.
Yeah. So can you give us an example of a circumstance where you were fired upon?
The first time I was ever fired upon was in Bosnia, at an observation post. It was myself, a press officer, Nick Witchell from the BBC, and some of the hierarchy from the regiment. And there was a sniper firing, and the observation post commander said, oh, he's firing at us. No, surely not. And eventually we all sort of looked at each other, and the Sergeant Major said, I think it's time we got down. So we all did. Nobody dare be the first to duck out of the way.
So were you expecting that situation when you first took this job on?
No. When I first joined the Ministry of Defence, we'd had the Falklands War, which I wasn't involved in, and then moved to the Army Press Office, and there were no conflicts going on. There was Northern Ireland, but they tended to cover the Northern Ireland situation with army photographers who were based in the province. And then all of a sudden, Bosnia erupted, and as well as the military photographers, the civilians were called out to go and cover, to relieve the military photographers who were going over and over again. So,
being in such a dangerous situation, have you ever lost a friend on the front line?
I've not lost a personal friend, but I've known people who have died. And one of the unfortunate sides of the job was we used to cover the funerals because the families don't see the ceremony behind the funeral. So we used to cover it, take photographs and provide them with a package afterwards, which most were very grateful for. We also used to cover it for the press, because the press can be quite intrusive, whereas we can be a bit more sensitive.
Yeah.
So we would provide photographs to the press.
So would you say that's like the darkest hours of the job?
Yeah, I mean, I've been to funerals of 18-year-old soldiers, and you know, it's quite upsetting. I've seen hardened Fleet Street photographers with tears in their eyes, and I've sort of had a tear in my eye, especially at the last moment as the coffin is lowered into the grave.
Well, you've actually fetched some photos today,
Yeah.
and just as we were talking, here's like an example of. I mean, talk us through it.
This was a guardsman. Obviously, you can see by the uniforms in Sunderland. Again, he was a very young man. Most of the soldiers that died were 18 to 23. It's a young man's occupation, therefore it's young men who get killed.
So very ceremonial.
Very ceremonial. The family don't see this. They're walking at the front. They don't see things like firing the salute over the grave. It's so I've had letters from families saying we're ever so grateful for the photographs because we didn't see most of it.
Yeah. So this looks like a happier occasion.
Yeah, this is the brighter side of it. Soldiers coming back and being greeted by the families. This young man, his young son was there, and the press were all there, and they took lots of photographs and that. But I'd had the idea of getting him to salute. He'd come in his uniform, had the young man, and so I got him there looking at his dad and saluting.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, as I'm taking the photograph, Fleet Street's finest were all behind me taking the same
Rushing to
photograph.
try to get in, yeah. Grab your moment. And where's this? This is obviously not in England.
That's in Iraq. Again, it's a very young soldier. This young man's probably about 18. And when you, it's hearts and minds, so you get them to interact with the children and the families and around there, to show them that you're not an aggressive force. That's why they wear the floppy hats, and they've not got the body armour on. But if you try taking a photograph of children, whether it's Iraq, Afghanistan, Kenya, they all want to look at the camera, and they all want to see the picture in the back of your camera when you've finished.
Yeah.
And trying to get them to not to look at the camera is quite difficult. But fortunately, this young man managed to distract them while I got the photograph.
And explain this one.
Yeah, I think it was the year 2000. There was a national fire strike, and I was in the fortunate position of being able to go to the fires with the fire crews in the Green Goddess, as they were. And I took this photograph on the first day of the national fire strike, and it was about 9:30 at night. It was an old fitness centre that caught fire, and by the time we got back, downloaded the photographs onto the computer, edited them, captioned them, and sent them off to the Press Association. It was about 11:30, 12 o'clock, which is too late for the national newspapers' deadlines.
Yeah, it was deadlines.
However, it was used the next day by BBC, ITV and Sky as the backdrop photograph for the story.
I was going to ask you if any of them got a lot of regional or national appreciation. Any of this work?
I've had photographs in most national newspapers. Daily Telegraph is always a good one. They always run my photographs. I've had several full-page, half-page photographs in there. One particular photograph I had in the Daily Mail, the Telegraph, the Express, the Mirror and the Sun, all on the same day.
Wow.
You don't get any extra money for it either.
It's a shame.
Yeah.
So, I mean, working in that sort of pressure environment, there must have been some real funny moments as well to lighten the mood.
Yeah, we're working in Basra Palace in Iraq, and we didn't have any body armour and helmets on because it was deemed that the threat was a little bit lower at that time, so you just carried it with you. And we were taking photographs of soldiers and doing stories, and all of a sudden I heard in the distance a boom. I thought, oh, what was that? And next thing, there's a missile explodes about 100 yards from us. So natural thing is everybody hits the deck. 2 more came in, and then somebody shouted, right, body armour, helmets on, get under cover. So I'm running back to the cover. I've got my helmet on, and I'm trying to put my body armour on. And I don't take slim fit body armour. It's, and I'm saying, which one of you's got my body armour? And when we got under cover, everybody's killing themselves laughing. I go, what's the matter? What's the matter? And they go, look. And I looked, and I had my head through the armhole of the body armour. That's why it wouldn't go on.
Yeah. So how did this end? How did you end up leaving the Ministry of Defence?
In 2011, the Ministry of Defence started a programme of redundancies, and there were 4 of us that covered the whole of the country, and they decided that we were an easy target to get rid of, so we were all made redundant. The idea was they knew that there was going to be a drawback from Afghanistan and Iraq, and they would have plenty of military uniformed photographers to fill our posts. So we were sort of sacrificial lambs.
Right. So, looking back, was it like a real memorable moment of that career?
I think one of the most memorable moments was a photograph of the Queen presenting the colours to the Yorkshire Regiment. I obviously had special access to the event, and I could go onto the square and take a photograph of the Queen presenting the colours. But so the proudest moment of it was that my son was actually on parade at the same time.
Wow. So both there for the right reasons as well. Brilliant. So just moving forward a little bit now then, tell us how you've moved into the career that you're in now.
Well, we lived in York, but we'd no family in York, so all our family were over in Lancashire. So it was natural that when I got my redundancy, we paid off the mortgage and moved over to Lancashire to be close to our family. And I just applied for several jobs, and this one came up. And I'm quite fortunate that I'm working with a student who's doing photography, and so we're both enjoying working together.
That's good. So are you still enjoying doing photography? Do you still
I still do the odd weddings and the odd portraits, and it's actually working the photography side of things here. It's it's sort of re-inspired me to do other styles of photography that had sort of lapsed.
Well, thanks so much for joining us and giving us a very interesting look into your career as a Ministry of Defence photographer. Thank you very much, Chris. Cheers. Yeah. Now, the latest news from BN&I is coming up after a short break, but from me and the team at Art Profiles, goodbye.